Welcome to On the Sidelines. I'm your host, Sam Brooks, and we are here again at Blue Coast Burrito every Monday at 5 o'clock and then tape delayed on WCTE every Wednesday at 7. This week, we're lucky enough to have the coach representatives from Macon County High School and Red Bull High School with us today to talk about their football programs. Guys, we're well into the season. Last show here, we talked a lot about playoff implications and the things that are coming up there. So it's getting to be that time at the end of the year where you spend a lot of time on the field. You know, summer practices are over, you got into your season, and now you're getting towards the end of your season. Let's talk a little bit about how your season's gone with the expectations that you had at the beginning of the year, and then just let the folks know about how your team's done, where you're going, and how you feel about your team. Randall, we'll start with you. Randall Smith, Macon County High School head coach, first year at Macon County, Cookeville native, and gone out and done his thing in Georgia for a long period of time and just moved back this year. Tell us about your team a little bit, Randall.
Well, Sam, what we've got is we've got some wonderful kids. We got 54 young men that are out playing this year. Out of those 54, we got 32 ninth graders. So we're in a process of rebuilding. Someone asked me down the road, I said, it's kind of like you're building a train track. We're just laying tracks right now for the future. But we're excited. We spent all summer getting to know each other, trying to learn the system, and now we're into the 7th game of the year, and the kids have started to understand what we're trying to do. You know, when you come in and take over a new program, it's terminology. Even though it may be the same base offense, it's your terminology and how you approach your scheme. So we've been working hard to teach them, and with a bunch of young kids, they're excited. Come to practice every day with great attitude and work hard, and we're excited about being back at home in Tennessee.
That's a great lead in Coach Shoulders, because years ago he started coaching here at Red Bull Springs and took over a program that had been down for a while, and he knows all about building and turning the team around and has done a great job there. Coach Shoulders, tell us a little bit about Red Bull in this year and how your expectations have changed from a couple years ago.
Well, you know, in 2009 when we took that program over, they were 0-70. So you're talking about some individuals that were participating with that program that had not won a game in over 7 years. So I feel like that the first thing that tells me is the type of character that those players have to be able to come to practice, play day after day, and not being able to win football games. But our first goal was to be able to compete on a weekly basis. And I feel like in the last 3 years that we've got to that point. Now we're sitting here in week 8, fixing to play Jackson County, where there's a lot of playoff implications for us. It's probably the first time in school history that in week 8 you're able to talk about the playoffs. Sure. So I hope that speaks volumes about where we were and where we are now. Our kids are absolutely tremendous, I mean, extremely well behaved, well disciplined. We like to use the word resilient when we talk about our kids there at Red Bull Springs, because I believe that defines them in every sense of the matter.
Well, I think you definitely have gained the respect of folks from around the Upper Cumberland area, and it's been a long road since 2009. A lot of hard work's gone in. You built the team numbers up. Depth is always going to be a problem. I think both of you can speak to that a little bit. Your situation, again, Coach Smith, from a team that's done very well in the last 2 or 3 years, and then going into a rebuilding phase, you touched on some good topics there about getting the kids to understand what you're trying to do. A lot of times it doesn't really matter what you do. Doesn't matter what offense you run, doesn't matter what defense you run, but it's kids buying into the program and believing in what you're doing. Tell us a little bit about how you've tried to instill that belief in your players.
Well, the process of teaching your offense or your defense is a lot of times it's understanding the schemes, and when you call it, like we're calling defense now, we'll bump the front. We do that not to get out leverage. So you're teaching your kids what football is about. Again, they're young. They're used to just running up and down the field and talent taking over. But when you get to the next level, they have to understand the scheme. Because a lot of times in high school, you can put yourself in a great play by just being in the right situation, in the right position. So right now, that's what they're starting to pick up, and you can see it. They play extremely hard. The other night, we had 5 freshmen on the field at one time. It's pretty amazing to watch them. They get out there, and they take their lumps. But they come in, they watch film, they come to practice, and they're excited. Like Coach Schroeder said, we got some wonderful kids in Macon County. They believe in football in that area, and they're going to stick with it and fight through the ups and downs. And we hate the downtime, but when the ups are there, everybody's excited, and they're always going to back Macon County Tigers and, of course, the Red Bull in Springs.
A lot of times you can't get to the good times unless you learn from the bad times, and I think you know, you can speak to that, Coach, also. Tell us a little bit about how the attitude at Red Bull has changed, maybe some of the things that you did along the way to get the kids to believe, because what I see now is a team who does believe. Every time they go on the field, they think they have a chance to win. And how important is that? That's very important, walking on the field knowing you have a chance to win. Not always going to, but you know if you play good that you have a chance. Absolutely.
That was a huge problem that we had in 2009 when we came there. We felt like that our biggest problem was the 6-inch space between our ears. Yes. Our mentality going into each game was not real well. You know, we would go into games and regardless of that team's ability or their record, we felt like we were beat before we ever had taken the field. And that's where we kind of went into wanting to compete on a weekly basis, not just with the lower teams in our region, but on a weekly basis. And I feel like we achieved that by not only maybe the things that the coaching staff did differently. I think it was just we improved on the things that the kids did real well. Right. You know, there were some things that maybe lacked in the past with attendance at summer workouts, maybe not summer workouts, sure. Or maybe just change the environment. And we did some things that kind of drew some interest with some uniforms, things like that, just trying to change the culture as a whole. And if the kids don't know, if they've not had that background, it's really hard to get them to understand the work and the time that has to go into building a program and doing things right, because they don't know. Right. And a lot of times that tends to be the hardest thing to do in rebuilding the program. Both of you are in the middle of that. You've done that. You've been there and done that and are on your way out right now to making a better team for Red Bull and Springs. And the conference that you play, and we talked about week after week, is one thing that you have to deal with too. But if you're good in that conference, you're good. So that's the thing that you come out knowing that you get to judge every week how you are against those teams, and thereby how you are against other people in the state. Coach, tell us a little bit more about Macon County and what the rest of your season looks like, and what you're thinking of even going into the off season.
Well, the Macon County Tigers are getting ready to face White House. Of course, everybody in this area will know that White House just upset Livingston last week. And Livingston is a great program. Coach Lamb has really built that and established himself over there. So White House is going to be a task for our young bunch. But we watched film on them today. The kids are excited. Our kids are getting to where they watch film and start pointing out things that they can see other players are doing. So they're starting to study the film. And you know, after playing so much, Sam, that if you don't know your opponent, it's hard to win. So we're starting to do that and just teach them how to watch film and get prepared.
I think the questions that I get from the show, a lot of people are watching the show and they're saying, hey, you know, you said this and I didn't know that. You know, one thing people don't realize that I found out is how much time that you put in as a coach and a player, how much time that you put in on a weekly basis to play football in high school. It's a job. It's a job they love or they wouldn't be playing. But it is a job. Talk a little bit about Coach Shoulders. Talk a little bit about the time and you know, not just on the field practicing and getting the schemes and the film and all that, but after the kids leave. That's one thing we wanted to change there too. We wanted the guys to show up and play football and forget all the extracurricular things that go along with football. We take care of their practice clothes, their game equipment, you know, and that's not even mentioning the film that we work with now. And we've invested in a program over the internet now called Huddle, which makes life a lot easier in a sense, and it also provides them an opportunity to be able to participate in some film study on their own as well, which is a huge advantage for us with having athletics after school. Sure. So they're able to spend some time doing those things, and I feel like the time that we put in as coaches is well worth it to see those guys be able to succeed on Friday night. Sure. And a lot of people, a coaching schedule, you practice Monday afternoon, we're lucky enough to pull you away from that. At least you get a little break and let your assistant coaches practice a little bit without you there. But, you know, Monday's kind of a slower day, maybe a film review day. Tuesday work day. You know, I'm talking till, you know, 6:30 practice and maybe a little film afterwards. Not to mention you got to get weights in there sometime. And then Wednesday's another long work day, probably the hardest work day of the week. And then Thursday you lighten up a little bit, talk more about game plan and the finalities of everything. And then Friday, of course, you play. Now, what a lot of people don't understand, Saturday. We wake up Saturday, we get up, we go trade the film if we have to. You go meet another coach. You have somebody going somewhere to meet another coach. Come back to the field house. You spend half the day, if not all the day, on Saturday breaking that film down for your players, grading everything. And then Sunday might be an off day for some people, might be a half-day work day for some others, and then you're back to the start of the week again. That's a hectic week. You know, I figured out one time what you guys get paid for what you do is probably about 35 cents an hour. And a lot of people do not realize that. And then you have some mom and daddy worrying about what you're doing for the kid recruiting. Well, you don't have a whole lot of time, you know, to handle a lot of those things. So I just want you to know it's much appreciated, and if we can raise the awareness of what you guys do out there for these kids, that's one of the focuses that we want to have on the show, is just introducing them to what you do and how much work that you put in.
Well, I think, Sam, that a lot of people don't understand it. Like when we trade film, a lot of times our opponent might be an hour and a half away. So we have to go meet a coach. Friday night, I got home about 2:30. After the game, I went and swapped film, got back. So it's not always just huddle. I wish we had huddle. That's the next process. But sometimes you physically have to go swap, and then you get home, and then you grade film. So it's Saturday morning before you even think about going to sleep.
And you remember the old days, yeah, when we were growing up, and remember the 35mm films we used to watch. I remember old Coach Honey, they would go travel to Rockwood every Friday night, get that, I don't even know how it worked, get it developed, and then bring it back to trade the next day. So it's gotten a little bit better, and you know, Huddle.com is awesome because kids can make their own highlight films and do the things that they need to do.
And you know, and talking about the time that we spend as coaches for the young men in the program to be able to be successful, I feel like it's not us that has the majority of that hardship. It's, you know, our wives or families that are at home. I mean, so you have to have a really good support system at home to be able to do this job.
Yeah, I used to tell at our banquet, I used to tell the parents every year that my wife was the best father that I ever seen, because I wasn't ever there during that time of year. So, well, fellas, we're going to take a break now, and we'll be back in a minute and talk a little bit more about general football stuff and maybe some playoff implications. Welcome back. We're here on the sidelines again, continuing our conversation with the coaches from Macon County, Randall Smith, and Red Bull and Springs, Kyle Shoulders. Coach, we've talked the last couple weeks about playoffs. We're getting closer, and it's really a focal point now with the championship game being down here in Cookeville at Tennessee Tech. We've talked about, as we've gone along, what teams are looking like they might have a chance to go far in the playoffs. Who better to ask than some guys who have been there in the middle of it, especially in the conferences that you guys play in. Tell us, we'll start with you, Coach Smith. Tell us a little bit about the teams that you played, and maybe some of the better teams and the teams that you think might go a long way in the playoffs this year.
Well, you know, we fall in a situation where even our non-scheduled games put us in the crosshairs of some good teams, such as Livingston, DeKalb, and Smith County. I'd say either one of those have a shot. At any given night, after playing those and seeing Livingston play, we'll play them next week, they can go a long way. Timing's the big thing. Injuries, everything coming together. But in our region, we're looking at Good Pasture. Good Pasture played with about 12 players missing the first 4 games. It's a private school. They had some issues. They took care of those. They're back. And we saw them on film playing our next opponent, White House, and they're pretty impressive. So,
always a good football team.
Always a good program. So You got good pasture, and then White House is starting to, things are coming in shape for them. They've had a big win over Livingston, rolled off a couple of wins early that got them going. We got two teams that could go far in our region, and then again, DeKalb County and Livingston, Smith County, if any of them won it this year, it wouldn't be a surprise. They're a talented program.
Score some points. Both of them play good defense. Coach, we've talked about it many times. One of the toughest conferences in the state of Tennessee, single A. Tell us a little bit about the teams that you played. Of course, with 9 teams in the conference, you don't have a lot of room to play out of conference.
Right, and you know, it's kind of statewide. You know, District 8 has been labeled as the mega region of the state. And I think that's because of historically what these guys have done. You know, we have Trousdale County, which kind of speaks for itself. When you hear Trousdale County, you think of gold balls. Right. You know, last year in 2A, Friendship Christian, they won it all. They're picked to win it all again this year in 2A. You got Gornsville, who has been to the semifinals the last couple of years, and they're picked to win it all in 1A this year. I assume it'll be potentially between them and South Pitt again if the quadrants work out the way they have last couple of years. So, you know, going back to trying to be able to compete on a weekly basis in the mega region, it's tough. And I no doubt feel very confident that potentially the 1A and the 2A state champion will come from our region.
Well, we've heard that from several different coaches on the show this year already. And that, you know, that's a bold statement, but, you know, Gordonsville being as good as they are, and then you always got Trousdale, who I think is young and getting better. I saw them play this year. And then Friendship Christian, who won the Gold Ball last year. So, you know, right there's 3 really good teams that can go a long way.
Well, you got a good combination there at Gordonsville. You got a lot of talent, and you got some really good kids, and you got a good support system with the community. And then on top of that, you put an excellent coaching staff there with Coach Marshall and Coach Bush, Coach Clemens, Coach Medley. You know, you're talking about a very experienced coaching staff there with Gordonsville. And when you mix a little talent in there and the fan support that they've got, you know, that's a deadly combination.
Yeah, it is. Coach, tell us a little bit, but you've seen DeKalb County, of course, last week, and you're going to see Livingston. You actually saw them play. If you had to guess right now, their big game coming up with them later on in the year, the last game of the year, I believe. If you had to pick right now between one of those two, going head to head, who would you take? Putting you on the spot here, Coach.
Putting me on the spot, but I always believe the team that can run the ball will end up winning the ball game. You can play zones and coverages and slow the pass down, but the ones that can run the ball usually win the game, the big games. And I guess I'd have to take my old buddy, Coach Lamb, over at Livingston. He's got a kid that can really run it, and he's got some big boys up front. So I think if it comes down to the nitty-gritty, he might pull it out at the end.
We're going to find that out here in a couple of weeks. It's going to be a good game. Coach, tell us a little bit about your conference. If you had to pick a team right now that you think could go the furthest in the playoffs, who would it be?
Well, you know, you're sitting with, obviously we've spoke about Gordonsville and Friendship, obviously, and Friendship's, in my opinion, probably the favorite in 2A, and their only loss on the season has came to that Gordonsville 1A team. Right. So no doubt I would pick Gordonsville. Okay,
and that's kind of what we've heard from the other coaches as we go along. We'll read off a few scores from this last week. Y'all hang out there for a second. Of course, DeKalb County 45, Macon County was 7. Red Bowling Springs and Monterey had a shootout last week, 68-42, and that's reminiscent of some of the scores that we've seen in college this year, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a second. Cookeville, of course, had an off week, a well-needed off week. LA 31, White House 32. Big play at the end of the game, come down to the very end of the game. Was
1.1 seconds, it come down to the...
Talked to Coach Lamb today, and he actually told me that might be one of the best things that could have happened to him at this point in the season. If you have to lose, you know, it's a good time to lose, and I think it really based his kids.
It's out of region. It's a step up. Yeah, it can be a motivator right here with 3 weeks left to go to the playoffs. Yeah, it could be a big turning point for him.
Yeah, he thinks it's going to make him a little bit more aggressive and kind of, you know, not worrying about being undefeated anymore. Really worrying about, hey, we've lost a game, we know how it feels, and we can go forward from here. So.
Don't hang on to it, let's go get it.
Exactly. Trousdale County, Pickett County last week was Trousdale 33, Pickett County 12. White County got a good win against Loudon. Loudon's usually a pretty good football team, 27-12, White County. Gordonsville, of course, 35-6 over a usually very good Westmoreland team. So again, Gordonsville doing what they need to do. Upperman lost to Grundy County 21-7, had a lot of opportunities, didn't cash in on. They lost their quarterback for a couple weeks, and that's been tough for their team down there. But I think Connor York will be back this week and be on the mend and hopefully get things going down at Upperman. Stone Memorial won a big one. We had the coaches here last week from Cumberland County, and Stone Memorial won that game 42-21 over Cumberland County, which was a good football game. And then York doing what they do, continuing a good season, winning 42-20 over Bledsoe County. We're going to touch a minute on, we've been doing this the last couple of weeks on offenses. With the advent of the spread offense and it getting into high schools more and more, what's your views on the spread offense and how you're dealing with it? Of course, new things are going to come along. Changes are going to happen. Spread offense is one of them, and I think the more that people get to see them, the better they're going to be able to defend on them. But looking at your views and what you think about it. Coach Shoulders, you want to lead off?
Well, with the spread offense, we ran that a little bit years ago when I was at Macon County, and that's what we had ran for the last 3 years at Red Bowling Springs as well. But I feel like if you're going to be a good, successful coach year in and year out, that you got to be able to strategize and do the things that are good for your talent level on your football team. So for us, we put in the wing tee and the double wing and doing some things with that this year. But as far as the spread, depending on the personnel that you got, I really enjoyed coaching the spread. And at the same time, it can be a hindrance trying to defend and play against, especially if those athletes on the other side of the ball are extraordinary.
So can the wing tee.
Absolutely.
I went away, I played at Cookville High School, went away and came back into coaching. I'd never played the wing tee. I think we played it one time when I was my whole time in high school. And then I come back coaching, and everybody's running the wing tee. So, everything kind of goes in waves, and who knows what's coming next. But, it's not necessarily what you're doing. It's what you can do with your kids and how you do it.
Well, that's one thing that we try to live by there at Red Bowling Springs, regardless of what offense or defense that we're running. We obviously know that they're going to make mistakes, and so, as well as me, on Friday night, we try to express that to our kids that we're going to make mistakes. But if we can make those mistakes going 110%, then good things will happen, regardless of the offense or defense that we're running.
Coach, real quick.
Well, the thing about the spread is you got to do defensively is you got to make sure that your matchups can compete with their matchups. Right. You have to make sure you break down film, see who they want to go to, because the spread is like any offense. You're going to have 2 or 3 that you're going to get the ball to, and you have to match that up and make sure you cover those. Again, you got to make sure that you protect the box. Can they run? Can they not run out of the spread? Everybody looks at Oregon and the high-powered teams. The things that a lot of fans will overlook is they recruit the nation to bring those players in.
Exactly.
And we have the local kids, and as Coach Schroeder says, we kind of morph as coaches. You may be based out of the wing or whatever, but you have to fit your program to your kids. So each year coaches morph their offense and defenses to fit that. And
I'll tell you something that we had a problem with actually with Monterey last week, because they get in some single wing where they just like to run right at you. And then they'll spread the field as well. So some problems that we got into was when they were in that single wing, we really needed more D-line, some bigger bodies in the box, So when they would spread the field, well, now I've got a D lineman floating around, and I'm short secondary guys. So we had to try to personnel them, and we had some injuries there early that prevented us from being able to do that the rest of the game. But that's a huge issue. If a team can run the spread and as well line up and run it right at you, then that's a deadly combination.
It's tough to defend. Well, I want to give a shout out this week to John and Linda Gale Knowles down in Sparta. And I want to thank you guys for showing up and being with us this week on the Sidelines.
Thank you for having us.